بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين سيدنا ونبينا وحبيبنا محمد صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا. Inshallah ta'ala, we want to continue our Fiqh of Fasting, and today it's going to be a continuation of last time of Inshallah ta'ala, also trying to think of things that people get to ask and to see if they would invalidate the siyam or not. Now, the somebody would eat. The question would be if somebody eat or drink, or for that matter, even ends up having sexual relationship with his spouse or with his wife. And out of forgetfulness, they have no clue, they forgot completely that they were fasting. So remember, forgetting is different than making a mistake. Let's make an example. So the answer, if somebody forgetfully ate or drank or even had a sexual relationship with his wife, out of forgetfulness, the answer is it does not invalidate the siyam. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgets and forgives the mistake of someone that has done anything out of forgetfulness, because it was totally out of your your mind, or you did not know it, or you did not know any better, or what have you. Now, second, it would be what's the difference between, let's say, between someone that forgets something and someone that is making a mistake. So that's forgetfulness, and making a mistake is when someone, for example, we will get you an example of someone is fasting during the day, and then it's getting closer to the Salatul Maghrib, and felt very hungry and very thirsty, and decided on his own that I think the sun is set already, the time has come. And he ended up breaking his fast, and then it turned out to be not sunset yet. There was still 10 minutes or 15 minutes to break the fast. This is not forgetfulness. This one actually does invalidate the siyam, because that's not forgetfulness. That's out of bad judgment. Why? Because it's a daytime. It's a daytime, and he did not take upon himself to make sure that the sun was set, that the Maghrib time was in. So that would invalidate, and he has to make up that day. The opposite would be something different, and that is someone is actually not fasting. It's during the night, it's nighttime, it is sahur time, and that person still thinks that the time of Fajr did not come in, and out of that still eating and drinking. And then they found out later on that they are actually, what the time of Fajr was already in 10 minutes ago or 15 minutes ago. This would not invalidate the siyam. Why? What's the difference between the two examples? The difference is that he was already at night, which is allowed for him to eat and drink and have any of the permissible acts that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allowed him to do. And his bad judgment was based on still what was available at that time, which was he was not fasting. and he made a judgment that it was still nighttime and it's not Fajr yet, and the judgment was wrong, it would not invalidate his fast because he based it on the current situation, which was nighttime. The opposite question or scenario was different. He was during daytime and he was already fasting. And for him to break his fast, he had to make sure the time of Maghrib came in, but he didn't, right? He didn't. He was fasting and he broke the fast. That's why it invalidates his fast. Where at scenario number one, he was not fasting and he was eating and drinking based on that judgment that he was not fasting, thinking that he still has 10 minutes to go. And then he found out that that his judgment was wrong when he actually maybe looked at the time or went out and to see that if Fajr time is in or not, and he found out that it wasn't. So that's the difference between khata and nisyan. So to go back to our question, when it's nisyan, anything that's out of forgetfulness, there is no issue. They would continue their fast with no issue. If it is out of if it is out of bad judgment, then we have the two scenarios. That's the answer. If it was nighttime and they were already not fasting and they kept drinking and eating, thinking that the time of Fajr was not in yet, and they found out later on that it was in, that would not invalidate their fast and they can continue. Scenario number two is that it was daytime and they were fasting and it started approaching Maghrib time, and the person took a bad judgment of hastening and rushing into breaking the fast, assuming that Maghrib time came in when it did not. That bad judgment, based on being fasting already and not double checking on the time of Maghrib, breaking the fast without doing so would invalidate the fast, and it would um, require that person to make up that day. Now, another question comes is, what if someone wakes up in the morning and the time of suhoor is gone, it's already Fajr time, and finds out that he had a wet dream? What's the ruling on that? The answer is it does not invalidate the fast because it was beyond his control. He did not do it on purpose, neither did he ever had a control of it. It happened naturally as what dreams happen. Woke up in the morning after Fajr prayer, saw himself with a wet dream. All he needs to do is to take a shower, a ghusl, full bath, and then go ahead and pray Fajr at that time and continue the fast. No problem, inshallah. A following question would be similar to it is that what if someone did not make any effort or physical touch to of his body parts to actually discharge many fluid like a sperm fluid or ejaculation? He did not in any way touch any of his body parts. He did not do any physical action to stimulate his body or anything, but ended up actually physically discharging sperms. Or, he or she, of course, this applies for both or out of a sudden something moved in his body, or saw something out there of uh, uh, or something on his computer, something that stimulated that naturally, saw a picture that actually um made him, or had made his sexuality aroused or whatever, and he did not give it any second glance or anything. He did not stare at it. He did not, you know, uh, uh, he did not use it to kind of um, uh, allow himself to actually ejaculate or anything. He didn't do any of that, but naturally his body did actually discharge that. The answer is it does not invalidate. It's very similar to a wet dream. A question comes from the sunnah is that we use the miswak, which is that wooden stick that we actually clean our teeth and gum with it. So someone is asking, someone wanted to use the miswak during the day and saw it very hard. So went to the faucet and put some water on it to soften the miswak because it was very hard. So he wanted to put some water on it and rub it a little bit so he can have the miswak become a little bit soft so he can actually use it. And while using it, he felt the wetness from the water on the miswak as he did it, and it was very difficult for him to distinguish between saliva and the water and what have you. So it became part of his saliva, and he ended up swallowing the liquid. The answer would be is that that should not be of a problem. It should not be of a problem. Why? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allowed him, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allowed him to use miswak, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allowed him to use miswak. So it's not a problem, inshallah. Now, what if someone actually got extremely dry in his mouth and it's not time for salah and it's not time for wudu, and wanted to actually do something similar and make a wudu outside of the prayer just to refresh himself, and part of it honestly to refresh and also to quiet down that dryness. He has a very very dry mouth and what have you, and he ended up making wudu outside of salah just to refresh himself and get that dryness out and what have you, which is going to wet his tongue with water, and it actually did, and it calmed down that dryness. So the question is, would that invalidate the fast because that's outside of the salah? It's not needed. It's not a needed wudu and what have you. And there was part of it is to wet the tongue with water. So the answer is it would not invalidate the fast because again, wudu is something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allowed during fasting. Remember, Allah is the one that told us to fast, and He's the one that is giving us allowance what to do and what not to do during fast. The miswak is one of it. The wudu is another example of it. So that would not invalidate. But of course, we are saying these answers with a person being very cautious not to do it extensively, or I'm sorry, excessively, to a point that it's being obviously done for a mistake to happen and for the water to be swallowed, or for the miswak to be so wet that it gives a lot of water in the mouth. We We know better, of course. It should not be in any way done that way, but rather naturally happened without any excessive, extravagant way of utilizing these allowances that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us. Another question comes about, again, taking shower several times during the day to calm down, especially when we have Ramadan during the really, really hot time, during the summertime where people are working, they're sweating and what have you, and they are boiling, honestly, sweating so much, and they want to calm down that heat. So they end up actually taking a shower to calm it down, or actually, for that matter, swimming. And taking a shower during the day and inhaling inside the mist, or maybe having the water, now it's not coming through a regular wudu like we said, and there is no need to take a bath because that's not a ghusl. uh, we would still apply the same ruling, is that ghusl is an act of worship, and it can be done when needed and when not needed as an extra thing. But it has to have the niyyah, if it was ghusl, to make up, to purify the body. But here is not. We're just taking a regular shower. That's just no niyyah of ghusl or anything. Can he take a shower? The answer is yes, because that's not something that would put the water in. He just needs to be very, very careful. Same goes with swimming, yes, but again, he needs to be very careful that water doesn't come from any part of the opening, whether it's his mouth, his nose, his eyes, if a lot of water gets through his eyes and down to his throat and what have you, or from any possible way that he would swallow that water. So the answer is it would not invalidate, but they should be careful, even if the niyyah and the intention is to calm themselves down from that heat, from this sweat that they went through. Now another question would be the opposite. And the opposite mean is that someone is at a construction site, and or during the season of allergy like we have right now, especially in our area here in the Carolinas. Now, what if someone actually is fasting and in a construction area, or the air and the atmosphere and the air is full of either dirt because of the construction site, or that pollen thing that is everywhere, everywhere. And as you breathe in, it is so obvious, especially when it start flying, up around you and whatever, and you feel like all that dust is coming your way, whether it's dirt, dust, or that pollen or what have you. But it's very obvious that we are inhaling that it came through our mouth, and I can feel the particulars of the parts of those, or I can feel actually the dirt. I would spit out whatever I can, and then the rest would just be no problem. So it does not invalidate the fast, inshallah ta'ala. Um, Now about the mucus, as again, people with asthma, people with sinuses, with have you, they would have a very, very hard time to get that mucus out, because it's really mainly internal. It's like internally in their throats, and it's very hard to cough it out. So they feel physically that they're swallowing that, and it's going down their throat, The answer, it should be fine and it does not invalidate again because that's beyond their control. Those who are able to spit it out and to let it out, then they are commanded to do so. Another question comes is about unintentional vomiting. But it's not really, really vomiting. So it's unintentional vomiting when they let everything out. But then again, they had to swallow the remaining of it and whatever. Would that invalidate? The answer is not. Similar to that is something with people having a lot of acid reflexes. So they have acid reflexes and they feel it and they just can't. It's not. It's small enough to be felt, but they just can't spit it out. It's really internal within their throat and what have you, and the path of their throat and what have you. So they end up actually swallowing back that acid reflex. Inshallah, that does not invalidate the fast. Now, what about smelling very strong smells, whether it's really beautiful perfumes or even chemical smells while cleaning the grill and the hood at restaurants and what have you, or through construction and paving the road, or many, many other examples. Very strong smell, very strong, out of the ordinary, where you can feel it while you inhale it that it hurts or it is so nice, like perfumes and what have you. Whatever. Would that invalidate the fast? The answer is no. However, the only exception is what we call the bakhur. The bakhur is has a different hukum. Bakhur is just something that most of you that went to Umrah and Hajj is familiar with, which is part of a perfume that comes from wood. You see it in the stores that actually sells perfume, where they actually sell the bakhur, which is small sticks of wood that are extracted from trees and plants and what have you, that actually gets used to make a nice smell and what have you, and they actually burn it, and it makes very, very nice smell and what have you. The bakhur has just a specific ruling to it that the scholars have said. The way that the bakhur is, because it's not just um, um, a dust, or it's not just it actually uh, it's not making a smoke. I'm sorry, it's not a dust. It's not just a smoke, but actually that white smoke that comes out of it is heavily mixed with the tree's material of oil and what have you, and that makes it more of a physical part inside the throat where someone feels it, and it actually allows that person to swallow it down. That would invalidate the fast, but that's only one exception. The rest of the strong smells are completely different. Now, the last thing that we would cover is something that we talked about the difference between forgetfulness or bad judgment. Is that somebody would answer a question is coming about shak, which is doubt, about doubt. If someone actually ends up eating and drinking with doubt, doubting that Fajr time has came in. People, do not undermine any of these questions. Don't say, this is a very silly question. And no, it's not, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made each one of us has his or her own a special time or special case and situation where all these things apply. People at work, people on travel, people are not around any kind of clock or anything. People, inside emergency rooms and what have you, they don't know. People are waiting in a room for, for any reason, and they're really blocked, and they have no clock, and they have no issues, and they feel that the time of, let's say these questions applies to anybody. So someone is doubtful about Fajr time and keeps eating and drinking. The question is, would that invalidate? We covered that by saying that this is considered to be a bad judgment if he ends up actually continuing to eat and drink and finds out later on that the time of Fajr already came in, when he got an access to a watch or to outside, and he found out that actually it is Fajr time and the sky is very clear. It's way past Fajr time, meaning that Fajr time has been in maybe for the past 15-20 minutes and what have you. It does not invalidate, because that was based on doubts, and he was already in a state of not being in a state of fast, and he went into a state of fast without knowing. That's doubt. That's fine. Then another question would be someone who is fasting and with bad judgment breaks the fast without double checking that sun has set already. And we would say that actually invalidates the fast, because he should have done more due diligence, more of finding out of when Maghrib. And he was already fasting, and he should not break the fast except with certainty, not with doubt. The previous question, he was already not fasting. It was during night, and he was naturally eating and drinking. With doubt, find out or found out that Fajr time came in, no problem. Continues fast. Second scenario, fasting with doubt, broke the fast. Not acceptable. It invalidates. You cannot break a fast with doubt, right? You cannot break a fast with doubt, but rather with certainty that sun had already set. So this is, inshallah ta'ala, last thing that I want to cover with you today, inshallah, a question about uh, the rest of the session now, inshallah ta'ala, is to cover most of the frequent asked questions that have directly or indirectly, or maybe not, been mentioned in our regular classes since we started in Ramadan. So that just gives us extra knowledge of what's on people's mind, and how can we answer them from the lectures that we ran. Before we go into the usually last part of the rulings of fasting, and that is the i'tikaf. So we're gonna finish everything possible about questions about fasting before we go into the ruling of i'tikaf that pertains directly to Ramadan, to fasting during the last 10 nights like we are in now. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept from all of you. So the last question today, or actually, since we have reached to the end of the session, we will start with the last question, inshallah ta'ala, tomorrow, which is the kafara and the expiation on those who actually break the fast on purpose during the daytime of Ramadan with no reason. They just don't want to fast. So how do they make it up? They just didn't want to fast, and maybe they were not practicing Muslims, so they broke it on purpose. So how can they make it up? But we will see, inshallah ta'ala. We will start with that tomorrow, inshallah. جزاكم الله خيرا وبارك الله فيكم. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept from all of you and reward you all, and accept from you the qiyam and siyam of those blessed last 10 days and nights of Ramadan. Allahumma ameen. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.